Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 194 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today, we're sponsored by Dexcom, Omnipod, and Dancing for Diabetes. There are links in your show notes, but you can always go to myomnipod.com/juicebox, dancing, 4, diabetes.com, or dexcom.com/juicebox. On today's show, we welcome Jake Leach back. That's right, the Dexcom Senior VP of Research and Development is back on the show to tell us about new developments with Dexcom and to answer a ton of questions that were submitted by you, the listeners, through Facebook and Instagram. Jake was very generous with his time today, so let's not waste any more of your time getting to the show. I'm not even going to give you the tease about what's on this episode. It's all of your questions and everything Jake was allowed to talk about. All right, before we get to it, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise, and to always consult a physician before making changes to your healthcare plan.
Hello, it's Jake.
Jake, it's Scott.
Hey, Scott.
You know we're recording right away. So I, besides having you on last time, you said, hey, I'm going to have stuff to talk about after I go to Germany, which I thought was great. I actually reached out into the world and got a few questions for you that I'm going to rapid fire through at the end if we have time, which I think we will.
Awesome.
Okay, so the last time you were on, I can't believe I'm saying this. I kind of forget why you came on. I think we were talking about G6.
That's right.
And it arriving, right? And sort of at the end of the episode, I said, is there, anything else you can tell me about stuff that's coming? And you said, after October. So it's after October. Tell me all the things that are happening.
I'd love to tell you everything, but we've got a number of exciting things that are now becoming public that I can talk about, and obviously have a lot of exciting stuff in the pipeline that will also be coming out. But Insulin Partnerships is some of our newest announcements, so we can spend some time talking about how we're integrating G6 with a number of the insulin delivery partners.
Okay, well, I'm thrilled because this is, the first time that I genuinely have no idea what we're going to talk about. So I'm sort of excited to find out along with everybody else. I don't even know where to start. Go ahead. What's the most exciting thing that's about to happen?
Well, one of the things that that Novo Nordisk announced at the EASD was that we've partnered together. Dexcom and Novo Nordisk have partnered to develop diabetes technology specifically around connected insulin pens.
Okay.
Also, sometimes folks call them smart pens, but what it basically is it's a number of insulin pens that they have had in development and are planning to launch as early as next year. And what they are is they're pens that keep track of insulin doses and then communicate via a couple different technologies. Some are NFC and some can be Bluetooth. Communicate those readings to your phone. And so you're moving forward, the Dexcom app will be able to record insulin doses for those on MDI therapy. The insulin pen injections can be loaded into the phone, and then you can imagine all of the exciting algorithms and decision support technology that can be developed once you have a good, valid insulin data communicate to the app. And the whole point is that we want it to be done passively so that the users aren't typing in or trying to keep track themselves of their insulin doses. It's all about the pen, the technology doing that for them.
Okay. Yeah, because I think that's a speed bump for people, really. When you have to log things, it seems good in theory, right? Until you're, injecting, I don't know, on a park bench, and you think, I'm not going to put this in my app now. I'll do it later. And you never remember that kind of thing. So these pens are just going to speak to an app, or are they going to speak to the Dexcom app?
They'll speak to the Dexcom app. There's also other partners that Novo announced that they, partners like Gluco, that will also be able to access the data. So there's quite a bit of work going on developing the kind of architecture and how the apps coexist and how the data flows. But it's exciting that we have originally we had Lilly on the pen side, we still do, and now we have the next large insulin manufacturer kind of coming on board and connecting with Dexcom. So we're pretty excited about that. Partnership's we've been working on it for a while, and so it was just recently announced last month. So we're going to heads down and develop some exciting products for both the U.S. and outside the U.S.
I have to ask, even though you won't be able to tell me, but is there a timeline for it?
Well, what Novo announced is that what's been public is that they're expecting to launch some of these pens in early 2019 in key markets. So they have a number of markets inside and outside the U.S. So the plans will continue to firm up, but they are planning to get the technology out soon, in 2019, which obviously means it's been in development for a while.
It's kind of incredible as you're saying this. It strikes me that in the world I grew up in, and I'm getting towards 50 now, but in the world I grew up in, there'd be, I don't want to call them monopolies, but if you made an agreement with a pen company, it would be with that pen company, and that would be kind of your power base. Like your power would be in exclusivity. But now the power is in choice. It really is. It's a paradigm shift, really. It's interesting that you're working with Lilly, working with Novo. They all have these smart pens, and you're happy to do business with any of them that are doing good work. It's really. Do you know what I mean? How that's sort of uncommon for somebody my age, at least, to look back on the way the world used to work.
It is. Kind of always been the key focus of Dexcom to be. We're very open. We feel that partners can really amplify the value of our CGM as well as our CGM can amplify the value of their systems. And so early on, we made the decision to non-exclusively partner. Our first two insulin partnerships were with Animas and Insulet. Yeah. Many years ago is when we first started those relationships and said, what, we're not going to be exclusive. We're going to work with all the different options because you said it, Scott, it's all about choice. And some patients choose to use an insulin pump for continuous infusion. Others find the pens kind of their therapy of choice. So it really, our goal is to kind of cover as many options as we can with our different partnerships, both on the pen and the insulin pump side.
I think it speaks to the quality of Dexcom, too, that the pump companies and the pen companies then are willing to. Do you know what I mean? Like to be able to say, hey, it's Omnipod with Dexcom, or it's Tandem with Dexcom. Like that's interesting. I think that shows that you guys are leaders in the space for sure. Okay, cool. So smart pens coming that are going to make decisions, and basically you're going to start getting not only decision based data back, but sort of that it'll also log so that you kind of have the information that a pump would give you too. Insulin on board, time left, that sort of idea is all going to be there. We interrupt your regularly scheduled podcast to remind you to go to dancingfordiabetes.com. That's dancing, the number 4, diabetes.com.
That's right. You'll have insulin on board. And you can start, algorithms that give guidance around insulin dosing. We'll start with insulin visualization, so making sure that the insulin is captured, particularly in our retrospective views. So you can imagine for the healthcare provider, when you go into the clinic, up until this point, the information from a MDI user is fairly challenging because they're giving their doses as they need as they're eating their meals, but you're not really getting an electronic copy of that. So one of the ideas is healthcare providers now going to get high quality data from the insulin pens visualized in Clarity. So there's a lot of opportunity and visualization of insulin data in Follow. That's another feature that we're looking at because wouldn't it be great to be able to see insulin delivery as well as glucose excursion within the Follow app, both for our pump and pen partners. We think that would be a really good feature for Follow that we've actually already enabled it in the cloud on the back end. And so we just have to do the visualization. One, we have to have the connection to the partner data, and then we do the visualizations both in Clarity and in Follow and in the G6 app. So a lot of work's been going on behind the scenes there, and now we're excited to start getting ready to bring some of it to the market.
And to extrapolate even further into the future, even though it wouldn't be exactly the same, you could have that app prompt you when to bolus. So it would almost be like as close as you could get to a closed loop system, but with MDI. Is that reasonable?
That's right. That's exactly. Yeah, you got it, Scott. Okay. And we can even we can detect missed boluses. I mean, imagine you start to see a glucose excursion with no insulin delivery. You can actually prompt the user to say, "Hey, did you remember? To take that bolus." So there's quite a bit of advice, guidance, help that a system can provide. I think the key has always been got to be easy to use, and it's got to not cause. You got to get a lot of benefit from it, in order to be able to, in order to use the devices. So these things have to be really simple.
So can I ask you to pretend with me for a second? Say I'm using this system in the future, and I'm injecting, and I forget to tell it, hey, I'm having a large meal, and it can see my blood sugar starts going up. So it says to me, hey, did you remember to bolus? And I think, oh, I didn't. And then can I tell it, well, that's the meal I ate around this time? Could it make an insulin decision, not just based on the carbs, but on what it's seeing with my blood sugar as well? Absolutely.
I think the, a bolus calculator, there's lots of them in existence today, but what doesn't exist is a bolus calculator that not only takes a glucose level into account, but also takes change in direction.
Yep.
There's a number of protocols and a number of, guidances out there about how to dose insulin based on, glucose change and, trend arrows on your CGM. Yeah. But if you can imagine, it would be fairly simple to take that and generate an algorithm that just prompts the user with, here's the glucose change, here's how much your blood sugar is, here's how much, if it's correction dose, here's how much insulin's on board. And then you could basically enter carbohydrates. There's a lot of exciting work going on in terms of how to help folks estimate carbohydrates, and there's a lot of thought on pattern recognition there. I mean, if you think about it, most people don't eat, dramatically different meals every day. Mm-hmm. You kind of have quite a few patterns, right? So you could start to understand for a certain person what are the different meal sizes look like. So it may not have to be, hey, I'm dialing in an exact number of carbs. Yeah. It could be more like I'm having my typical breakfast.
See, you're going to put my podcast out of business, Jake, because I talk about, obviously, pre-bolusing is just monumentally important. But if you miss on a pre-bolus or a pre-bolus in time or a pre-bolus just isn't possible, then I talk about over-bolusing. So bolus for the carbs, then bolus for the spike that's going to come because you didn't pre-bolus, and bolus for the momentum that the food causes. And it's a guessing game when you're doing it without an algorithm. All this talk about algorithms and the future is making me excited. It also makes me incredibly happy that Arden is an Omnipod user already. Because once all of this comes together, not only is Arden going to have all of the goodness that comes from this Dexcom stuff, but she's going to have the only tubeless insulin pump to make it all happen. But even before all of that integration is finalized, I believe that Arden is incredibly lucky to be using a tubeless insulin pump that allows her the freedom to live the way she wants without being connected to a device and a bunch of tubing. The best part about the Omnipod really is its small form factor, that it's self-contained, that it holds your insulin, and that when you need to talk to it, it's not connected to something that you have to keep clipped to you. There's this little device off to the side, you push a couple buttons on it, tell it you want insulin, and then there's a wireless transmission that happens between that device and the pod, and the bolus just happens. Actually, a little later in this episode, you're going to hear Jake talk about something about Omnipod that's going to make you incredibly excited. I don't want to spill the beans yet. But trust me, when you hear it, it's going to make you giggle. Like a little gleeful hee like that. That's not gleeful. I can't do it. Anyway, it'll be glee. In the meantime, if you're not already using the Omnipod, today is the day to start. And it's super simple. All you need to do is go to myomnipod.com/juicebox. There you can try a free, no obligation demo of the pod. They'll actually send you one out that you can wear and try for yourself. You can absolutely not beat free. You cannot beat no obligation. Just go on myomnipod.com/juicebox, fill in the tiniest bit of information, get the demo, see what you think. Get ready for the future. You want to be ready when the future gets here. You don't want to be standing around like, oh, the future's here? I didn't know. What's next?
Well, we've got just a quick kind of to touch on the insulin pump side. One thing I think we mentioned last time when you and I spoke was that Dexcom had recently acquired Type 0 Technologies, which is a group in Charlottesville, Virginia. It's a spin-out of the University of Virginia. They've licensed technology from the university and have a close working relationship with the technologists at the university. And what they've developed is both closed-loop algorithms for insulin pump delivery, which is that technology is being implemented in the next generation of the Tandem pump. It's called Control-IQ, and so Tandem's that's currently going through studies. So there's that technology on the insulin pump side that we will plan to make available to our pump partners and continue to evolve that technology, working closely with Tandem on a next generation of even past what they're having clinical studies now. So we have that technology, but that group also is part of our approach to the decision support algorithms that you and I just talked about. So that group was actually even conducting studies on MDI and they called it the In Control Advisor. It was actually an app that gave advice about the patient's diabetes in terms of insulin and how much to take. And so it was actually recording a lot of information during that study. So that study is still ongoing. And we're learning quite a bit about how to implement a good decision support system from that study. And we're basically taking the team from Type 0 and combining it with some of our internal efforts, to really supercharge this focus on decision support and what guidance we can help give patients now that we've got, accurate CGM, reliable CGM readings along with insulin data. So we've got kind of both sides covered. On our pump side, we've got Tandem, who I spoke about. We've got Insulet with their Horizon system, which they've been continually providing updates on their progress there. They're planning to enter clinical studies soon with that. One of the interesting things that they recently announced, I don't know if you heard this, was that they are now partnered with Samsung to bring to market a ability to dose your insulin, so provide your boluses or make pump adjustments from your own cell phone. So it would be an Insulin app on your phone that allows you to provide dosing guidance, which is really exciting because we for a long time at Dexcom, we've always thought the cell phone is a great interface for many, not for everybody, but for many patients, that's a very convenient option. And with the Insulet system, you always had this extra PDM you had to carry the programmer. And now for those who want to use their phone, they can use that connection on their phone. So that was an exciting announcement that came out at the Samsung Developer Conference last week that both Insulet and Dexcom attended.
I haven't dug into that as far as I have, but just the overarching announcement in 7 days became the second most popular blog post on my blog this year. And
nice. That's exciting.
Yeah, I'm assuming you know what the most popular one was, but yeah, it's you guys. Yep. You guys are I think that Omnipod and Dexcom are the two most kind of compelling technologies in diabetes. But anyway, it's amazing. It's incredible. Can I ask you a sort of related question? Do you guys see pumps with closed loop systems? Do you see glucagon ever being necessary in the closed loop, or do you think the algorithm will make the glucagon not necessary? Or do you not care?
It's a great question, Scott, because we're partnered with Beta Bionics, which is founded by Ed Damiano, and his approach has always been to use glucagon, the bihormonal, we got insulin and the glucagon. And he's produced some really exciting results with that system in both adults and pediatrics, in different environments. And I think for me, one of the things I always struggled with early on with the concept of the glucagon in the closed loop was that there just wasn't nobody had pump stable glucagon.
Yeah.
So you had to mix it, and a lot of the stuff that Ed was doing was every day he had to mix a new version of the glucagon and then put it into the reservoir of the pump. So I always thought, boy, that's a real hassle. I don't know if the benefits are worth doing that. But he believed in the technology, and so he's been working with a couple of different manufacturers on, making pump stable glucagon available. So I think he's made a lot of progress there. I think there's still more road to go, but I think it's much more of a possibility now that you're getting glucagon that can remain stable in a pump for multiple days. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to see. I think there's it's more, a system with two drugs in it, more complex, but potentially could get better outcomes from it. So I think the answer really is I don't know. I think we're partnered with folks that are working on single hormone and with Ed on his dual hormone, and we'll see. I think what's going to end up happening is the usability of the product and the clinical outcomes are kind of the two keys to the product. As well as cost, how are these markets going to evolve over time? My expectation across all the markets is we're going to continue to improve the technologies and reduce the cost of them. Yeah. So that'll be another important aspect of the technology.
Yeah, there's a small company in Chicago that's getting ready to put their stable glucagon, I think, into FDA into the process.
Yeah.
So okay. Well, yeah, I just was wondering, because it makes sense that if you could bump both ways, not just make future decisions based on algorithm data, that I assumed it would be easier. But you make good points about cost, and something's going to come up later while we're talking. But okay, that's absolutely terrific. I'm at a loss. I don't know what they ask you about next.
Well, I can give you some more updates. So we started last month. We started launching G6 outside the U.S. So we have started with some of our key markets outside the U.S.: Germany, Switzerland, UK, and we're going to continue to roll it out over the coming months. But our plan is to roll it out as fast as possible. We already overall there's more users on G6 than there are on G5. So we've been very quickly upgrading all the patients to G6, mm-hmm. Kind of balancing our ability to manufacture the product. We've been continually increasing the scale of our manufacturing operation on G6, and we've had a few struggles.
Jake, you broke up. You are completely gone. I can't hear you. Jake, did I lose you? I definitely lost you. Hold on a second, everybody. Calling Jake on a cell phone today. We don't usually do that.
Sorry about that. I guess we got cut off.
Don't worry about it. I think you were getting ready to tell me, you were talking about supply chain, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we're ramping G6 as fast as possible. And we are, excited about what we're seeing in the market. There's more users on G6 than are on G5 now. And we will, our plan is to get as many people on G6 as possible. We recently got approval for Medicare with G6. So we're planning to launch that as soon as we have capacity to do that. So yeah, we're, it's all things G6. We're working on enhancements to that platform and also working on our next generation platform, the G7.
Okay. So let me ask you a question about supply chain, because I reached out into the community and there was a couple of things that I got asked about multiple times. One of them was that. So it's interesting that some people experience it. Forget what the issue is. Sometimes issues are experienced by some people and not by others, which must be a phenomenon that makes you mental. But because, for instance, Arden's had the G6 since the limited market release. So we have to be up on 6 months now, right? If not longer. And we have not had one failed sensor. Every one of them has made it 10 days. But then you'll hear somebody say, I can't get any of my sensors to last more than 7 days or 6, that kind of thing. And the same goes with supply. I hear people say all the time that customer service is slower now that they've grown, which we've seen in the past. Kevin's been on in the past and talked about that. Like, we grew really big. We're trying to catch up with customer service. We'll get there. And that there's a problem with supplies. But as an example, in my life, by the way, I want everyone to understand that when I call Dexcom, it's not like a different phone rings to some. I call the same customer service people you do. My account doesn't say the guy from the podcast. And I said, hey, it's time for me. You know what I mean? It's time for me to order sensors. And I waited I was on hold and had the whole call was done in less than 10 minutes, and the stuff arrived 3 days later. Why is it different for some people than others?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll approach it a couple different ways. So when it comes to just product performance, one of the things we're very proud of is that as we've continued to scale G6, we've been able to keep the product quality high. Mm-hmm. And so what I would say is, from the data that I've looked at with G6, often new users to the system, whether they're particularly if they're new to CGM, or even if they're just new to the G6 system because it is different. Sometimes it takes a little while to figure out some of the tricks to making stuff, sensors last, stay on, all of those things. So what we've seen is new users continue to get better experiences with the product in terms of sensors lasting, Bluetooth connectivity, all of those things. Once they learn some of the tricks to getting for the system to work, and we're one of the things we're focused on is how do we continue to make it so that you don't have to know to cycle your Bluetooth on and off to fix your connection, or make sure you really clean the skin and don't use some sort of lotion on before you put your sensors on, and how you treat the adhesive and all those things, right? But all the things you've learned over years of using a CGM product. But some patients, not all sensors last. They can stop before 10 days. And so we want those people to call in. We want to be able to replace their sensors. So I think, different experiences, there are lots of different experiences out there, but from everything I've seen, the quality of the product is still very high, even though, we're continuing to scale manufacturing. On the supply side, it's a very complex story because different people, based on their insurance and how they get the product, will determine kind of what could happen. I'll give you an example. Some patients get the product directly from us. Some patients get them through a distributor. Right. The distributors make very large orders from us, and then they take those orders and they provide them to the patient. And so depending on which distributor you have, how they do their orders, and when we do run into some sort of supply issue, can dictate who could run into an issue and who doesn't. Our goal is to make sure that nobody runs into a back order situation, whether it's a direct customer or through a distributor or through the pharmacy, because more and more of our patients are starting to get the product in the pharmacy.
So can I jump in for a second?
Yeah.
So a distributor.
Yeah, go ahead.
A distributor can they can make a decision to throttle their shipments, but that doesn't mean. So I think what people imagine is that there's a big Dexcom warehouse somewhere and it's empty and there's no stuff in it. And I seriously, yeah. I believe that. But I read through this stuff and I think, oh my gosh, thank God I don't have like a market research job. Because as I'm reading through people's questions, you can sort of see where sometimes they don't realize that the question's very specific to them, or that just because they went online and saw 20 people say the same thing, that doesn't mean anything. Because I don't think do you guys release your actual amount of users? You don't say that, do you, publicly?
No, I don't believe we do.
But it's the same. But if I said that I saw 100 people saying the same thing, that would be a tiny percentage of the overall users.
Absolutely,
an imperceivable amount almost. And so that's sort of the internet playing tricks on you once in a while. And when it's happening to you, it's as real as it could be. You know what I mean? Like you said something just a second ago. It was amazing. Like, you put on the new G6, right? You stick it on, you break off the little tab, you push the button, and it's on. But how many people then go back and push down on the adhesive when they're finished? I do that, and they never fall off of Arden. You know what I mean? Like, as Arden's, moving towards her first shower, she'll come to me and say, hey, let's cover this Dexcom before I jump in the shower. Like, little stuff that takes you from thinking, oh, this thing doesn't work, to me just understanding it like, oh, this is exactly how this works. There's this thing that is incredibly specific. It's this device that's incredibly specific. It's static, trying to be put on what I'm guessing is hundreds of thousands of different people with different skin types, different hand lotions, different blah, 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 blah. And it's interesting because it's easy to feel like it's you and it must be this horrible problem. But I will say that we've been using Omnipod forever. It's 10 years. And in the first week I had Omnipod, 3 of them I took them off. And I thought, oh my God, this thing stinks. It doesn't work. And then I realized like 2 months into it that each one of those was me. Like I didn't do something that I now know how to do. And it's just very interesting because when you're caught in that moment, it is super simple to feel like this is a huge world issue and it has to be happening everywhere. So my point is I believe that when somebody says, I reached out to EdgePark and EdgePark said that there's a supply issue, they are apt to then blame Dexcom, not EdgePark. But is that the case, or how does it actually? And I didn't mean to use EdgePark as an example, but like a distributor can throttle their own stuff. That's a supply issue. That doesn't necessarily mean you don't have it. Is that right?
Yeah, generally, if a distributor is struggling to meet an order, it's generally because their shipment from Dexcom either they didn't order enough or we weren't able to send enough to meet their full order, and then we're going to send a bunch more. But because one distributor is running into an issue doesn't mean the other distributors have that same issue, and doesn't mean that Dexcom direct customers or pharmacy customers will have it. It's one of those, you just kind of, if you're tight on supply, somebody somewhere is going to get hit by that. And then, our goal is to prioritize anybody who doesn't have sensors. We got to get them sensors as fast as possible. So it's one of those things. It's not, it's kind of, it can move around based on, timing, but we are continuing to ramp, and we're going to, our expectation is we'll have plenty of capacity. We're almost there now. And so we got to, demand is definitely outpacing what we thought. The awareness around Dexcom, CGM, G6, we knew it was going to be high, but it's a little higher than we planned.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, we in hindsight, for our next launch, we'll plan for even more demand than we think, just to be safe.
And can we extrapolate that same statement and sentiment applies to customer service, that you're adding to that now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We're continuing to add more and more folks across our different call centers, depending whether it's technical support or customer support for orders, or patient care for those that need extra help. So we've definitely got all those head counts are increasing, so that we can make sure we can get to those phones.
Cool.
We keep tight metrics on our ability to, how quickly can we answer phones, how long are folks on wait, and every time I see a long wait time, I feel awful. It's like, hey, we got to get, this person needs help. Let's get somebody on it. So we're doing everything we can to bring on more folks.
It's very cool. It's so funny how cyclical this whole thing is. Like, I had this conversation with Kevin 2 years ago. Like it's the same conversation. Like, I'm going to ask you in a little bit, like, to explain like how Bluetooth works again, because the people who heard that explanation, some of them are off in their lives now, and now there are new people coming on. They need these same explanations. But first, do you have any other announcements that we haven't touched on yet?
No, I think Scott, I think we've hit it all.
Okay, so now we're gonna play fast money here. All right, we're gonna whip through and see how quickly Jake can talk.
I love it.
All right, so I have some now questions and some asks.
Great.
All right, so I think some of them we've hit already. There are people who think the sensor failure rate is greater with G6 and G5. Does any of the data support that statement?
It does not, but what I will say is that the adhesive on G6, although it's a different shape and there's a little more actual adhesive material on G6 than there is in G5, it's the same patch material. So if you were struggling to get a sensor to stay on for 7 days, it's going to be even more challenging for 10 days. So I think that in that aspect, let's see in terms of our kind of rates of replacement and the rates of how long sensors last. We're seeing good performance at the 10 days, but people do have issues, and then the product doesn't always last a full 10 days. So we're continuing to improve it. We do have a new patch material that will be coming out soon. which has a little. It's very similar, same materials, but a little bit more advanced design on the patch side. So we're excited to see how that does in the market.
Oh, no kidding! I think I have some of that. Somebody is it possible that a Dexcom rep would have handed me some of that at the JDRF event in Ohio last week? Is it out that far?
I don't know. I know we're close on it, so I don't know. I know we haven't cut over full production to it.
Okay.
But you may have got some early access to it. But yeah, it's a little stickier. And from our clinical studies we run with it, we've seen really good performance. Folks that were having issues with the older patch sticking, this one sticks even stuck better for them, and their sensors lasted. So. Cool. That's, so we're not seeing sensors with G6 be different, but, 10 days is longer. So, people can have issues.
Okay. Let's see. And that leads me to the next question a bunch of people ask me. Is the adhesive any different than prior?
No, it is not. Not on the first year version of G6 that's out there today, but there is a new version coming that's going to, at least from our clinical studies, it should be stickier. Yeah.
Okay.
Should stay on longer.
Is there a timeline for the new adhesive?
It's going to, I don't know the exact time, but it'll definitely be out within, if not this year, next year.
Okay. This is this one was huge. Is my Apple Watch ever going to be able to act as my receiver without a phone nearby?
Yes. The answer is yes. The timing is still, we're still working through all the challenges of the complexity of the Bluetooth under the hood. Mm-hmm. So, we've been working on the Apple Watch project since before Apple announced it, not this summer, but the past one. And what we found through working with Apple and working with the products is that the original user experience from some of the initial implementation from Apple, it wouldn't have been what we wanted. It would have been too complex and kind of frustrating for most people. So Apple's made a lot of enhancements on the way that the watch Bluetooth functions. And so a lot of it is very beneficial to the CGM communicating directly to the watch without a phone or receiver model. Mm-hmm. And so we're deep in development on that. And we're working on how to change the Bluetooth protocols within the transmitter so that it can support that direct-to-watch connection. But we will get there. Apple is committed to it. We're committed to it. We're going to make it happen. It's just taking longer than we'd want and longer than we hoped. But it's a very active project, and we're going to do it. I don't have any timing on it, right. But it's as soon as possible. The new operating system for the watch it has allowed us to make a lot of progress on this development. We were a little bit stalled for a bit because there's some challenges with how the system would pair to the transmitter. But we've overcome quite most of that. There's still a few things we got to fix figure out how to solve.
So is that a hardware issue or like if I have an older watch, might I just not be involved in this when it finally comes to fruition, or was it more about the operating system? If you're listening to Jake right now and thinking, how is it possible I don't have a Dexcom? It's time to get moving. Dexcom.com/juicebox. There's also links in your show notes. That's where you go. That's where you get this whole process started. Come on, think about it. Listen to what he's saying. No finger sticks, integration, decision making. Everything is coming like a freight train. The future is bearing down on you like a bear in the woods, and you're holding a big honey pot. Here comes it. Here it goes. Hey, it's the future coming. Boo, I'm almost here. You hear it? You hear it? It's sneaking up behind you. It's not even that. It's kind of like got big, heavy footsteps, and it's not even sneaking, really. It's right here. It's coming like, I don't know. What comes fast? Think of something that comes fast. Rain on a summer day. Yeah, like, you're walking around, it's nice out, then all of a sudden, boom, here comes the rain. That's how fast Dexcom's coming. And the stuff they have right now is spectacular, but the future is so bright, you're going to have to wear shades. Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you understand what I'm saying? Dexcom.com/juicebox. Don't even let me spend time talking about share and follow. Don't let me spend time talking about no finger sticks. That's all there. You understand that already. The last thing to do is to get it. I just listen to the music. Listen. I'm going to go get a Dexcom when this is over because Scott was telling me about it and it sounds really cool. Yeah, that's it. Dexcom.com/juicebox. It's like you're the Predator and Arnold Schwarzenegger is in that movie. What's it called? Predator. And he says to the Predator, do it now. I'm here. Do it. Just do it. Dexcom.com/juicebox.
It's mostly about the operating system. I believe the Series 1 watch does not work because it doesn't have the hardware. Okay. But the other series watches do work. And so you don't have to have the latest Series 4 for this feature to work. It's the way that we see it right now. You can still have some of the older versions. You just need the latest operating system for the watch, which almost everybody upgrades right away.
Yeah, in the same vein, are you going to do this with Fitbit ever?
So we are working with Fitbit, and we actually recently got a few approvals for some products that are for really outside the type 1 intensive insulin space. They're more for type 2. One of the integrations there is with a Fitbit. It's not direct to watch, though. It's through the phone still. So the Fitbit technology, they'll need to make some changes to the hardware and software on the Fitbit before we could enable a direct connection. Okay. But we are working with them on site. We call it secondary display, but it's the concept of have the convenience of the readings on your wrist. But you're still tethered to your phone, but the Fitbit still connects, to the phone. So, but we are working on that. And we did get an approval recently for a product in the type 2 space that utilizes it. And so we're looking at how do we take that and apply it to our G6 product.
Okay. Let's see. Hold on 1 second. Oh, here's an easy one. Android, any updates to the Android app? Will there ever be a widget or notification that includes the number?
Yes. We're working on that. I'm assuming when they say that there's the I know we call it widgets on the iPhone. There is a display of on when you swipe, you can see the number on Android. They may be talking about follow. I don't believe we have that functionality on the Android follow. But yeah, we're working on both enhancements to follow as well as G6, as well as supporting more phones on Android. And so, and we continually have done a number of point releases, fixing bugs, improving performance on both the iOS and Android apps over the past since we've launched G6.
Well, let me pop in with this just real quick. It's nothing I think you probably have to answer, but people want you to know that the Google Pixels aren't allowing follow to override default sounds or alerts with the latest release.
Okay, that's good. That's good feedback. I hadn't heard that yet, but we'll jump right on it.
We can beta test you right now. And so I
love it.
Get you the beta information right now. So you did mention G6 for Medicare. That happened. Is that going to happen?
Yeah. We're going to launch that as soon as we have enough supply.
Great. Oh, so that's a now thing. That's this year, or not this year, but in the next handful of maybe next quarter to 2 quarters situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. Yeah. I think Kevin may have given some more particular guidance on our last earnings call, that just was from last week. But yeah, we're definitely full force on getting ready to launch that.
Okay. Is there a time in the future we can expect a generational leap with the Follow app, like rise and fall alerts, like that are for rapid rise and fall, like no data alerts, like being able to use landscape, those sorts of things?
Yes. There's an entire revamp of Follow in progress right now.
Okay. All right. I see. You're not going to tell me when. In that same vein, a couple of people wanted you to know that the Watch app looks a little old. So there, I've passed that.
I agree. I agree. It's one of those, for a long time we were so focused on G6 and all of our resources were on G6. And so we were just making the system compatible to make it work. Now we need to continue to enhance the platform. And I completely agree. There's a facelift is needed.
Okay. Let me bang through a couple more because then I have a couple bigger questions. Let's see. Oh, here's a small one. I guess the app update that happened recently, when you add an event, the highlighted dot is gone. That seemed very important to somebody, and I think they would like it back. So I know you.
We'll take a look.
When will we be able to see a number on my watch complications? So not just the Dexcom icon, but as a follower, when can I look down on that complication and see a number without having to open it up?
So that's a very good question, and that's just one of those features that it's on we call it the backlog. We have a long list of features that we continually work to prioritize implementation, but that is something we do want to. It's on our list to implement. Also, so it will happen likely with a new release of Follow. Okay. But we'll usually what we do is we'll release features, kind of one at a time, or a few grouped together. One of the exciting things is the new 510K status of the Dexcom G6, the Class 2, a little bit faster, our ability to get releases out. So now that we have that from the FDA, we're looking at how do we take advantage of it. And it's likely going to be a number of releases with new features being implemented more frequently than you've seen in the past due to the faster approval times.
I wanted to mention that I got a new Apple Watch, and there's the new face that, is the one that I want to use, except the complications are sort of like a slightly different shape on some of the watch faces, and it doesn't allow for third-party complications in some of them. Is that something you're aware of, and is that being blocked by Apple, or is your complication just not designed to fit in it?
No, it's certain complications work in those faces and other ones don't. Apple really controls. That's one of the unique things. They control that watch face, and I think that is, there's quite. If you get into the details, there's quite a few rules around the complications and how often you can update them. Mm-hmm. Most of it is driven by battery consumption on the watch. Right, the more activity you're doing, the more you're updating the complications, the number of complications. All those things have an impact on the battery life of the watch, and so they've got some tight restrictions that they've worked to loosen as they get feedback from users and developers. They get feedback and they make changes, but they tightly control it so that you get a repeatable experience on the watch battery life.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like something they don't want to make a claim about the watch battery life and then have your complication drag that down, and then that's not something they can answer to. It's sort of like
that's right.
It's sort of like your problem with Bluetooth. Honestly, like it
right.
It involves somebody else, and how do you address something with a different company? Hey, a lot of people want to know when you'll be able to increase the number of followers. Is that something that's being thought about? Because apparently there's a lot of I have to drop somebody and then re-add people and do a lot of the stuff with smaller kids. It seems to be more prevalent there with their parents. Is that on the horizon by any chance?
It is. It's one of the key features of our next generation Follow is to be able to follow more, have more followers, and be able to follow more people. Oh. So both of those are on our list because we recognize when we originally developed it, 5 was kind of a number that we optimized around, but there's no technical reason why we can't do more. It was just kind of that's where we landed in the original share, and so it's high time we updated.
Somebody wanted me to ask you if you could make it possible to log in the Follow app and have that linked to the main account. So. Oh,
that's interesting. So have the follower enter events.
Right, and there are events to meld seamlessly with what's being entered on the person with diabetes phone too. So.
Yeah, that's good. That's good feedback. Okay.
G6 for iPad, is that coming?
I do not.
Did we lose that? I don't know. I don't use my iPad for Dexcom stuff, so I wasn't.
Yeah, the iPad support for the G6 is not on the roadmap for right now. Most of our experiences with the iPad was that the use case there weren't very many people using it, and the amount of work for us to support it was quite substantial. Gotcha. Because every time a new version comes out, every time there's a new version of the iOS or the phones, we actually have to do a tremendous amount of testing on the inside. Yeah. Nobody sees that, but that's how we ensure everything works properly. And so the iPad was just not supported for that reason. If we didn't have to test it as rigorously, it could be, but at this point right now, that's where we're at. We have to do a lot of testing for each model of phone, whether it's iOS or Android. So.
Let's see. Is there actually, I'm going to ask that one another one. Let me jump to this. Sorry about that. Alert sounds being more user definable. We talk about this a lot. I remember the last time I spoke to you, I talked about a person who was telling me that children, like boys of a certain age, can only hear certain pitches and like that voices work better. And so people really do overwhelmingly want more options because I think they get alarm fatigue. But someone made a specific, asked me the specific question that I like. So not only do they want more sounds, but they want to know if you guys can define better the alerts. So the example that was given to me was basically this. Say my target is 110, but my blood sugar is 120. But the Dex knows I'm going to be, say, 105 in 5 minutes or something like that. Is it really necessary for me to be alerted that I'm 120 if I'm going to be 105 and stable 5 minutes from now? And are smart alerts like that possible? And so there are two different questions in there. Will we be able to make user-defined sounds? If we can't, is that the FDA or is it just a limitation of the software or something you guys haven't implemented? And can you make it so that it's smart enough not to alert us when it doesn't need to, even though the number might indicate that it should? Dancing for Diabetes just had their huge blowout show. It just happened. If you missed it, it's not too late to find out more about it. Check them out on Facebook, Instagram, and at dancingfordiabetes.com. That's dancing, the number 4, diabetes.com.
Two great questions. So the on the user-defined sounds, it's just something that we haven't implemented. But we have talked about it quite a bit because we do get the request. And so I don't see any reason regulatory-wise, as long as we have a default sound, and then if the user chooses to select a different sound, that they should be able to do that. So I think that's a good enhancement for the app as we move forward. And then on the smart alerts, we have a lot of discussion about this internally. We basically did implement the urgent low soon alert, which is a kind of the concept of a smart alert, where the goal is to give the user more time of an alert sooner in time than they normally would get if they're going to be urgently low in the next 20 minutes to 30 minutes. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for smart alerts. I've heard many times about someone has a particular meal and they know their glucose is going to be high and they don't want to continually be alerted. They want to be able to say, okay, I get it. I ate some cake and my glucose can be high. Don't keep reminding me. I get it. Mm-hmm. Remind me, and way out in the future if something isn't being corrected. But and I think that the great idea about that concept of if you're going above 120, but we know you're going to be 105, particularly if we've got insulin information and kind of some patterns. I think there's a lot of opportunity for making alerts and alarms more convenient. I think we've had threshold alerts for a long time. We're starting to introduce some predictive nature, and I think convenience is a big aspect. For us, with alerts, it's always about, we got to make sure that our instructions about how they work are very clear, and that's where the FDA comes in. We do, the way that you validate that is you do a lot of human factors testing with actual users to ensure they understand how that alert works, because the last thing you'd want is to implement an alert where the users, some users may understand it, but others may not understand exactly how it works and have a different, the wrong interpretation. Mm-hmm. So that's where, got to be obvious, which is sometimes I've always been surprised at how hard sometimes it is to make things obvious, because everyone has different assumptions and they approach things differently, and so that's the exciting part of developing user interfaces is how can you take lots of different people and have them all have the same assumptions about something. So it's good feedback.
Okay, have you ever used Photoshop Elements?
I have not personally. Our team may.
So it's an interesting in that you can choose to use Elements as a beginner, as an intermediate, or as an expert. And as you click on tabs at the top of it, it changes what the app does. It's fascinating. I know it's not something you could ever do, but it made me think of it while you were talking about that. So in the end, what you guys make has to work for everybody. And just because some of us might be more expert users than the other doesn't mean we can leave a new person behind and them not understand their alarms and other things. I get it. Okay, a couple quick. I have kept you way longer. Are we okay?
Yeah, we're fine.
Okay, cool. Let's see. Apple CarPlay. Do you think that'll ever happen?
It could. We've prototyped with it actually. Even a couple of years ago when it first came out, we had CarPlay stereos, enabled stereos on engineers' desks, and we were playing with it. Haven't. I don't think we kind of figured out how we'd bring it to market yet, but I think it's an exciting option. So it's definitely something we've looked at and we're looking at.
Web access to follow. That's something simple, like maybe like a little widget or something on my screen, something where I could see somebody's blood sugar without having to open up a phone or something like that. I know there's a third-party option, which, to be perfectly honest, I'm looking at right now on my screen. It works great. So if you can, apparently they want your version of it. Here's a small one. When I clear my alerts on my watch, can they please clear my alerts on my phone too, so I don't have to clear them twice? Is that a limitation of iOS, or do you just have to tell them?
It's not. No, it was a limitation of some of the earlier designs, and also a little bit of the kind of regulatory approach. One of the unique aspects of is if you can clear alerts on your watch, it's no longer considered a secondary display. It's in control now of the system. Mm-hmm. So the regulatory kind of approval cycle for that in the past was different. Now that we're at the 510K, we can fix that. And so it's on one of our higher items on the backlog of features to implement. So we do recognize that would be much more convenient to be able to acknowledge it on your watch and not have to go back to your phone. Okay. So we will fix that, and it's not a limitation of the device.
Okay. So Two more questions, slightly bigger ideas, and then I'm going to ask you about pipeline, and then I'm going to let you out. So one person asked, are you guys happy with your MARD value, or is it something you're always working on improving?
I would say we're happy with it, but we're also always working on improving it. The sensors work. They're very reliable, but as everyone's experienced at times, it can be inaccurate. And so there's always places for us to look. And so the team that's continually at Dexcom worked on improving performance is going to continue to do that. So we're really my main focus is now not on the average metric, but it's the MARD metric. I'm way more focused on anything that's more than 20% off of a blood reference. Mm-hmm. It's kind of the outside of 2020, those metrics that we capture 30% off or 40% off. We have a very small number of readings that are in those areas, but those are the ones we're focused on because we want the system to be as reliable as possible. So we'll never rest. We're going to keep we're the performance leader, and we intend to stay there.
Excellent. Is there any? I feel like people talk about waste, like recyclable waste, with G6 more than they did with G5, and it's funny because when I hold the G5 inserter and I hold the G6 inserter, they don't feel like one doesn't feel much heavier than the other, which in my mind means it's not that much more material one way or the other. But I think it just looks bigger, and so it bothers people more. Not that it shouldn't, but do you guys ever talk about recycling programs now, or is that not something?
We do. We talk about recycling programs. We also talk about kind of next generation, our next generation platform, kind of making the applicator device even smaller with even less plastic involved. I mean, I think the complexity is getting the sensor under the skin isn't as simple. There's a lot of important aspects to it. It isn't just like slipping it under the skin. There's how the needle inserts, the speed, the size, the force, all those things. And so the G6 was our first automated applicator with all that technology built in. And we do talk about recycling programs with it, but recycling medical waste is a bit challenging.
Deconstructed, right? It has to be taken.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that there's a lot of cost involved in that for depending on who's paying for it, and so it's one thing we are very aware of it, and I think with G6 you do have less applicators per year than you do with G5 because of the longer sensor. Mm-hmm. life. But we're aware of it, and we want to continue to make the products as environmentally friendly as possible. But the reality is that it does take technology to get that sensor under the skin.
Yeah. Hey, if someone sees a blood sugar that's just off, they're testing and the CGM's not saying anything close to what their phone says, even as G6, you want them to calibrate then or no? What are they supposed to be doing then?
No, usually, with G6, my recommendation is if you take a finger stick and it doesn't match your readings, or if you're reading on the phone just seems way off, on your display, if the CGM reading isn't what you expect, take a finger stick, double check. I mean, you don't ignore your symptoms or what you think things should work. Trust it. Take a finger stick and look. I think the way that I recommend folks use it is not to calibrate right away, because often the errant signals in CGM resolve themselves. And so if you see like a persistent error or a persistent difference between the finger stick and the CGM, then and you don't think it's resolving, then calibrate. But give it some time. If it's CGM's not reading accurately, don't immediately jump to calibrating, because what we've seen actually is that if you calibrate a CGM during a signal error, you can actually cause more damage than help. And so you want to kind of let it go for a little bit, and then only really enter calibrations if you're not seeing the sensor signal go back to what you expect.
Gotcha. Okay. There's a lot of questions that I don't think are you because you're R&D, but if you could pass on to anybody, obviously always cost, access. People want to know if there's a coupon day, stuff like that. But it's, I got a specific note from someone who listens in South Africa, and they're like, it's here and it's available, but I can't afford it. And is Dexcom helping to make that more affordable? Like, are they working with the entities that could help that be more affordable? It's just, is CGM just something that's not affordable for everybody, or is it something that we hope that one day it will be, and behind the scenes you guys are working towards that? We maybe just don't see that day to day.
I think the answer to the access is definitely yes. We're working behind the scenes on a lot of things. Medicare was a big push for us. We have a number of folks internationally that are working across the different markets and the dynamics in those places. And so access is going to continue to get better as it has over years. More states are starting to cover. Medicaids of different states are now covering, I think, with the movement of Medicare. So I think in the U.S. reimbursement is, it's always slow, but access, we've got, vast majority of folks with private plans or even public now plans are covered. It's to some capacity, and I think as we continue to improve the technology, cost, ultimately the costs will come down of the technology as we come out with future generations.
Yeah.
And so I think CGM is going to get to the point where it can replace finger sticks as I think it already has in many places, but I think across the world there's still some work to do to get CGM access better. I think a lot of it has to do with the amount of product in the country, the volume, the distribution, all of those aspects. So I just see CGM in the future being a lower cost overall. But I think it takes time, because we have to develop the systems that both have the level of performance that users need as well as the cost. And those are, in a lot of the technology, are competing requirements. And so there is a way to balance them, and we are continuing to make progress on both performance and cost.
Let me ask you this, and I'm just going to come right out and tell you, like, if you can't say or you're uncomfortable, I get it. But there is a less expensive CGM available. In your opinion, is it not the same quality? Is it not something?
It's definitely not the same performance. I think if anybody looks at the performance numbers, or even just talks to folks who have experience with the other competitive product, I think it's they'll know that the system is not as reliable in the hypoglycemic range. It doesn't have today it doesn't have, kind of any kind of alerts or alarms that could signal you. So I'll give you an example. What we've seen in Europe is that the healthcare systems are willing to pay more for the Dexcom product because of the feature set, the alerts, the alarms, the performance. We even have some areas, health payers that call out the share feature as an important aspect of the system, and they're willing to reimburse it for a higher rate because of that.
Yeah.
So I think it's well recognized. I think patients recognize it as well as payers and physicians. They recognize that there's a pretty significant difference between the two products. But the way that I would look at it, competition is good. I'd rather have a competitor than no competitor. So I think I think it makes us all better, and we all strive and push each other. So I like industries that have competition, and I like the fact that we do have some competition in the glucose monitoring space.
Yeah, Jake, I've sat in a car that you can buy for $10,000. I've sat in a car you can buy for $50, for $70, and $120. I can't afford a $120,000 car, but when I'm sitting in it, I get the idea of why it costs $120,000. And so I think there are levels of what you need to expect out of things, and it's easy to say, I don't know, there's some Mercedes over there I can't afford, but why can't it be as cheap as this Hyundai? And I think there's a reason. You know what I mean? And I just didn't know what you would think of it. And it's a tough question for me because, we've been with you guys for a really long time. I believe what you're saying, but I didn't want to, I didn't know how comfortable you are talking about. So I appreciate that very much. I guess the last real question I have is then, is you mentioned G7, so G7's next, but is G7 the last of that kind of, I don't know, features like form factor? Are we going to move to something smaller after that? Is that the goal? Or could there be a G8 while you're still working on something else? I guess Verily is next, right?
Yeah. Verily is next. We're working very closely with them on this next generation platform. And yeah, there will be G8s and G9s and G10. We're going to continue to innovate in all the areas we want to, which is, cost, convenience, performance, and outcomes is a new one, right? Trying to, we've for a long time, we've provided reliable glucose readings. But now it's all about what do you do with that information? How do you get a better outcome for the user, with advice, connections to our insulin partners. So there's still a tremendous amount of opportunity to continue to evolve the system. And so, there's multiple platforms. G7 is well into development, which is how in product development in general, but also medical devices that where you have to run clinical studies. You work on them for many years before they become public.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, listen. This is a little aside, but I hear anxiety from people a lot because now you used to be able to get a transmitter ahead. Like you used to know if the transmitter when the transmitter you had was done, the next one was sitting with you. But the insurance companies, I have pretty spectacular insurance, and I'm in that situation too, where Arden sensors just arrived the other day, but I was not allowed to order another transmitter yet. And I know that's a very backroom kind of thing, but if it could be impressed upon the providers that there is a lot of just quality of life comfort where it's not in the back of your head, oh my gosh, what do I do if this should happen? There's a lot of value in that for people. So I don't know if there's a way to pass that around and make any impact with anybody, but I know it impacts a lot of people. So I thought that was worth mentioning here at the end. It is. It's a great point. We recognize that, and I'll make sure that the folks continue to communicate that. But we fully appreciate the amount of anxiety that can happen, when managing diabetes, and the fact that if you don't have extra supplies, you don't have that transmitter, it's not a good feeling. Yeah, and I'm not looking for enough to stock up 10 people with diabetes for a year. I just want one, just enough to think that if something were to happen to this one, that was outside of the parameters of expectation, that I wouldn't then have to wait. I know it seems kind of crazy maybe to think, but for some people, having to wait 2 days is a long time. having to wait, and then some people fall into that. Well, my distributor is 2 weeks out, and it's a strange space for people to be in. So I appreciate you saying that. Jake, you stayed on way longer than we were supposed to, and I'm assuming I'm going to get yelled at about that later. But I really appreciate that. This was really fantastic, and you went through every one of these questions. So kudos to you for hanging on like this, and I really appreciate it. I hope you're nowhere near those fires out there.
No, we're lucky. We're lucky in San Diego. We're not near the fires. Although, yeah, feel for everybody affected, and really appreciate the time, Scott. Wonderful discussion, and don't worry, no one's going to yell at you. This was great.
I'm already married, Jake. I don't need to be yelled at by other people. Okay. I appreciate that very much. I really do. I whenever you have stuff to talk about like this, I love having you on. So thank you very, very much.
Okay. Look forward to our next chat.
Take care. Have a good day.
Thanks, Scott. Good.
Thanks so much to Jake Leach for coming on the show. Thank you to Omnipod, Dancing for Diabetes, and Dexcom for sponsoring. Please go to myomnipod.com/juicebox. Go to dancingthe4diabetes.com or go to dexcom.com/juicebox. Of course, you don't have to remember any of those because if you go into the podcast app, there's links right there. And there's also links at juiceboxpodcast.com. If you enjoyed the episode and you're looking for a way to share the podcast, go to juiceboxpodcast.com. Go to the page specific to this episode, copy the link, and take it out and share it in the world. I don't know where, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you talk to people. That would be wonderful if you could do that. Let me end by saying thank you for all the new ratings and reviews on iTunes, for everyone who shares the podcast, and all of the wonderful emails that I've been receiving. You all are far too kind. I'll be back next week.